We're running? Okay, well, welcome to the University of Ottawa's Mass Spectrometry Center. And today we're going to deal with everything you've always wanted to know about a Kratos Mono XPS anode, but were afraid to ask. This program is available in described video for the visibly impaired. So here's the anode itself. This thing gets put on a little conflat flange with a gold ring which goes there. So the idea is, this is the actual anode face where the electrons hit it. So this is obviously an old one. I'm not sure if you can see it, but there's a little crater there. That's where the electrons hit the thing. And there's a lot of power, i.e. heat, generated right in that little spot there, because they're 15 kV electrons. It was 150 watts of power. So this needs to be cooled, hence these tubes here. Now, which one's in and which one's out? This one has to be water in. Why? Because it runs all the way down the middle and it ends just about there, just in front of that face, anode face. So the water there, the cold water comes in. The first thing it does is it hits the hot spot. After that, it does its thing and comes out this one. So it's important that this is the supply and that is the return. Now, over time, these things wear out. You lose the aluminum off of it. And I think with the light like that, I can see a little dimple there in the middle. Anyway.
You can see like blackness and
the other voice is
something
Sharon,
in the middle.
Lovely assistant. Yeah, there. Anyway, so now, so where do these electrons come from? Well, now we need the next part, which is this thing. This is the famous, they call it an anode housing. And what this does is it goes, anode goes in here, right? And then this goes on top, right?
Can you take that off and put it on again?
I can take it off and put it on again. So there's your anode face, and that is your hole for your X-rays. Now, so where did the electrons then come from? They actually come from here. Now let's see if I got that. No, I had that the wrong way around then. Yeah, see, this is not that trivial. All right, so it works like that. So the this thing will hold the filament like that. So there's a hole for the electrons to go in, and there's the hole for the X-rays to come out.
Okay,
so when you put this thing in the machine, yeah, well, I'll get back to that in a minute. Okay. When you put this thing in the instrument, it's important that the X-ray hole faces up. You don't put this the wrong way around. So, this anode sits at about 15 kilovolts or 12 kilovolts. The filament is essentially grounded. So what you're going to need in between is an insulator, and that's the white bit here. That is Macor, machinable ceramic. The copper block here is just glued in. So these anode blocks often have a problem. They can have a few problems. One is the glue lets go, in which case this can rotate. That's no good because you don't want it to rotate like that. The other one is that you get a crack or dirt. I don't know if it's visible, but you can see a little crack there.
Yes, we can see that.
So this one's useless, it's cracked. And you can also see this crack as a black thing on the inside there.
No, I don't think you can see that.
You gotta
but once it's cracked, it no longer insulates?
It starts to arc through the crack.
Not good, that's a lot of voltage.
Yes, no good, get rid of it. So, all right, so then Alright, there's this. How did this go together? We wanted the X-ray hole at the top and the filament hole at the bottom. Now let's look at the filament itself. It comes on a holder. So, don't roll off the tape. So, you can tell that this filament is broken.
I need to just get...
There's a piece missing between this post and that post.
Okay, yeah.
Half the filament's gone. Now, I don't know if you can see it, but the filament is supposed to be white.
Yes.
And you can see
a bit of it.
You can see the white over there. What is the white? The white's the thorium oxide, which makes it emit at a reasonably low temperature. The filament itself is tungsten. So what happens if over time you lose your thorium oxide layer is that you now need a lot more current to get the same emission, because tungsten itself doesn't emit as well as thorium does. That's why they put that white goop on it. So this thing then, this gets mounted on here. See, that's pretty straightforward. There would be 2 screws here. Then the anode goes in. Come on. And right, and we've got, there's a stop here, and then this goes on top, and then there's a clamp that goes around this to hold it all together.
Like a Jubilee clamp.
Right, like a Jubilee clip, exactly. Now, you gotta align all of this stuff, and the way that I usually do it is, if everything's okay, if I look down the X-ray hole, I should see the filament in the reflection of the anode.
Yes, but I don't think I'm going to be able to.
No, I don't think you'll be able to see that. So,
but say that again. What do I need to be able to see?
well, I'm not sure if this is actually a rule, but if you look down the hole, then you see the. I actually do see it there.
Yeah.
The reflection of the filament should be visible on the anode face.
That's a good thing to know.
Yes. So this is how this sits, and then once there'll be some wires. There'll be one wire here. So that's for essentially for the voltage of that filament holder. They call that the bias voltage. And then you have 2 wires here for your filament. They will run in like ceramic covered wires down and end up over here where the feed-throughs are on the larger flange. Is there anything else? Oh yes, there's one more thing I wanted to say. So if you are replacing the filament, if all you're doing is replacing a filament, it's really easy, because you don't have to take this off even. You can leave all of this. You can just take the old filament off, put a new one on, and stick it all back in the machine. However, most of the time you'd also want to clean the anode, check it out, look at it, in which case now this comes off. You also want to check this thing. Is it black, dirty, cracked? Did the glue let go, and does it now rotate? So have one of these on hand. A dirty one you can clean up. You can sandblast this and make it all beautifully clean again. This one was sandblasted, but because of the crack, forget it.
So you should have a spare that you can put on immediately, and then you can go away and clean up the other one at your
exactly.
in your own
you
time.
Have one so you can rotate them in and out. Now, if Arnold Schwarzenegger put this together, then Arnold would crank the bolts on this clamp until they almost break. What happens when you do that, if you look at this thing, you're actually squishing the anode, the copper part of the anode.
Right.
After you do that, there is no way you can take this off without breaking things. So that is a bad thing. Don't over tighten this. It should not be able to move, but don't tighten it so much that you're actually deforming
Because
the
copper
anode.
is a little bit
Copper's,
malleable.
yes, copper's pretty malleable. Okay, so was that it? Almost.
How are you going to clean the end of it with all that black
this
goo?
you can clean it with, you can polish it with some polishing stuff, and whatever you do to it, you have to like UHV clean everything afterwards. If it's pitted, it's got a hole in it, forget it. If you can see copper through the aluminum, forget it, it's done. The aluminum layer is gone.
And then you have to buy the complete.
You buy the complete thing.
Anode. Okay.
Now the other thing to watch for is because of the 15 kilovolts on it, you can get a lot of electrochemical corrosion.
Ah.
And so even if this is okay, you have all the water pissing on the inside of it. So eventually you start wearing out this face here, which is quite thin actually. You start wearing that out over time. And there will come a point that the water drills a little hole from the inside and just starts pissing out of here, filling up your machine with water. This is not a good thing.
Buy a new anode.
Buy a new anode, yes. Oh, the other thing you'll need is the gold ring that goes in here. If you want to put a new one, I usually just flip them around. Now, we're not going to cover how to actually replace this at this point, but I thought this was a good place to start, just to familiarize yourself with the parts of this thing.
So before I take this apart, tell me the parts that I'm going to need to replace so that I have them ready. I should have a new anode,
filament,
a new filament,
anode, and this thing's called an anode housing.
And the anode
I think that's a little bit of a bad name. If I had to pick a name for this, I would call it a filament holder, because that's actually what it does. It holds the filament on the anode. I mean, it doesn't really hold the anode, it sits on the anode like that. Alrighty.
Excellent.
Done.
The end.
The end.